Welcome back. Now, Hank, looking back on how Toronto police handled the Bruce McArthur case, as the lead investigator, is there anything that you would have done differently?
I don't think there's any investigation that I've conducted or seen conducted that you wouldn't go back and do some things slightly differently. I think the months from August of 2017 till January of 2018, there's very little that we could have done differently. It was a very successful investigation at the end of it. So looking back at 2010 to 2012, 2013, I'm not going to second guess what investigators did through Project Houston, through the parts of Project Houston that I was involved in, through the parts I wasn't involved in. There was an incident in 2016 that's under review, as we all know, and I can't talk about that one right now. But ultimately, I think at the end of the day in 2018, we were fortunate to get to the point where we could arrest somebody and answer a lot of these questions that have been floating around the neighborhood for years.
As previously mentioned, McArthur was charged with assault in 2003. He was questioned by police in 2013. And as you had just mentioned, he was questioned again by police in 2016 with regards to allegedly trying to strangle a man. Now, in your opinion, could the serial killer have been arrested sooner?
I think any of those incidents that we've talked about, ultimately, had they been handled differently, I don't believe anything would have changed.
What do you mean by that?
I don't see, and again, hindsight's 2020. Always. And you had a very diligent group of investigators in Houston in 2012 and 2013, really desperately looking for answers as to what had happened to those three men. Very emotionally involved, very professionally involved in trying to figure something out, and the answer just wasn't there at that point in time. And even the incident in 2016, had things been handled differently, I don't think the links would have been there to bring Mr. McArthur into custody any earlier than when he was ultimately brought into custody. So in other words, even armed with hindsight, even with doing things differently, I don't think it would have changed anything, no.
Okay. In December of 2017, Police Chief Mark Saunders publicly dismissed the idea of a serial killer in the city's gay village. Do you think he misled the public by saying this?
No, I think he said what was exactly right. And as I explained to you earlier, at that point in time, we had some evidence to say that Mr. McArthur was a suspect in the murder of Andrew Kinsman. And that's it. And when the question was put to Chief Saunders about a serial killer, he said, we don't have any evidence to support that right now. And he was quite right in saying that. And we can't make statements based on speculation or theories, and he was quite right in what he said.
But do you not think that's some sort of warning to the community, whether it was the gay community or Toronto in general, some sort of warning as to the possibility?
I think if you look at the newspaper headlines in June of 2013, as far back as then, when we came out and we said, we've got these missing persons. We've got these three missing persons from the village, and here's the cultural connections between all three of these men, and they've disappeared, and we don't know what's happened to them. And we put flyers around the village. It was the front page of every newspaper in Toronto in June of 2013. And also the lead story on every major TV news outlet in the city of Toronto in 2013. And we put that out there, and when Salim Essen went missing and Andrew Kinsman went missing, it was very well publicized and and put out there. But that at that point in time, not only were there alternate explanations to a lot of these disappearances, but we didn't know what we were dealing with. So to come forward and say one of the theories is, or we're speculating this, would be terribly inaccurate. And you can imagine the repercussions if we had been wrong with that, right? There are several other theories being investigated, and quite frankly, we didn't know what had happened. So, and that's exactly what the chief abided his statement by, and he was correct with that. And at the same time, he also put out warnings in the same press conference about dating websites and anonymously meeting up with people that you don't know who you're meeting up with, and that was applicable not only to the gay community but the straight community as well.
How would you describe Toronto Police's current relationship with the city's gay community?
It's a work in progress. We have some great assets in place. We have Danielle Bottineau, who's the liaison officer, and we've established a lot of relationships because of this investigation and the introduction of people through this investigation. But we do have a lot of work to do until we have that open dialogue, that two-way street from both ends. We'll always have something to strive for.
What impact do you think the Bruce McArthur case had on this relationship?
I think it had positive and negative impacts. I think, like I said, it established a lot of new relationships. I've certainly received more thanks than I've received criticisms over the last year. And but it certainly reinforced some of those negative feelings that people have had towards the police.
Perhaps a sense of distrust. From
historic biases and a sense of distrust. And all I can say from my position for that is that we're there, we're always there, and we're there to help 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And all I can do is encourage people to don't be afraid to pick up that phone or come into that police station or send that message or email. And we're there to help. And I hope people take us up on that.
Do Toronto Police have any plans to increase protection for members of the gay community, specifically minorities, many of which make up the 8 victims of Bruce McArthur?
We do have a lot of initiatives ongoing and a lot of new initiatives being developed at any given time. Like I already mentioned, we have Danielle Bottineau, who's a great conduit to the community, and we're always in the gay village, and the officers are always out and about in the village. And like I said, at any particular point in time, we're always there, we're always available, and people have to realize that they can call us.
Okay. Last year, the Toronto Police Services Board commissioned an external review of how the police force handles missing person cases. Toronto Police also launched its own investigation related specifically to the Bruce McArthur case. In your opinion, is there something wrong at the moment with how the force handles missing persons cases?
I think missing persons cases are always evolving. I think they've always evolved. I've been a police officer in the city of Toronto for 30 years, and I remember when I first started, the procedure for handling missing persons cases was evolving. I don't think it's ever going to stop evolving, and we have to stay ahead of the curve. We've done some things in the last year to really get ahead of that curve. The Ontario government is doing some things, passing some legislation to be able to help us, give us some more tools when it comes to missing persons investigations. So I think we're definitely headed in the right direction, but I don't think it's something that's ever going to stop. Change is inevitable, and we always have to change and evolve and adapt to the modernization of society and the city and how we do business. So,
in what ways do you think it can be improved?
Well, I think there's, to give you a very basic example, is we launched our missing persons unit in July of 2018, and that unit works under homicide, and there's officers assigned to that unit to ensure there's a standard of investigation applied to all missing persons occurrences across the city. The individual occurrences are still investigated by detectives at the divisions, and they're being more efficiently tracked and monitored now by the missing persons unit. And like I said, ensuring that standard is met on every single one of them. So that's one step that we've taken so far. But like I said, we've got some work to do, and it will evolve.
Now, regarding the internal review that I had mentioned, you actually filed a complaint over the behavior of officers who might not have done what they were supposed to do with regards to the Bruce McArthur case. I'm wondering what more you can tell us about this. What inspired this complaint?
Well, as I've talked about before, it evolved from the 2016 incident, where upon my review of it, I thought there were some things that could have been done that weren't done. But that's not up to me to judge. So I did file the report, and it was forwarded ultimately to professional standards, and they conducted their investigation. And out of their investigation, they've charged one officer with some offenses, and that's before the tribunal. And we'll see what comes to that. Other than that, I can't talk too much about that.
Okay. On a more personal note, throughout your time on the Bruce McArthur case, you were promoted to head of the homicide unit. In what ways did the Bruce McArthur case challenge you?
The Bruce McArthur case was challenging from several perspectives. As we already talked about, it was a case unlike any other, and it was a recovery effort unlike any other. It was a case, I think, that affected the city of Toronto, if not the country of Canada, unlike any other. So huge demands, not just on my time, but on the time of all the investigators assigned to Project Prism. And obviously I was the main media liaison officer throughout the entire investigation. So that's very time consuming. It can be very rewarding. You also have to deal with a lot of criticism and handle that. And at the end of it, we were very satisfied, especially in January of 2019, when ultimately Mr. McArthur pled guilty to the offenses.
What will you take away from this case going forward?
I'll never forget the case. I don't think anybody involved in the case will ever forget it. There's still many thoughts in my mind about the case, and I don't think those will ever go away. It's one of those cases where we kind of joke around, and we've joked around over the last 30 years that, hey, this is something we're going to be talking about in the retirement home, and all the other memories have faded, and you'll still remember and talk about this case. So I've done a lot of big cases in homicide. This is definitely one of the biggest.
It was on January 29th, more than 1 year after he was arrested, that McArthur pleaded guilty to 8 counts of first-degree murder. He was subsequently sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years. Seeing this case come to its conclusion, how are you feeling?
Very gratified, content. It was a very big relief that he did plead guilty and that we didn't have to embark on a trial process through the Superior Court. So it was, and it's kind of amazing how in the couple of weeks after the sentencing, everything seems to have just kind of calmed down. There was obviously a bit of a whirlwind through the court process with public inquiries and media inquiries, but we're very happy with the outcome. And like I said, of course, we wish this had never happened, but we got the right resolution at the end of the day.
Okay. Thank you so much for speaking with us today, Inspector Hank Idsinga. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
My name is Jennifer Ferreira, and this has been yet another Gran Entrevista. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good night.
Manhã Canadá televisão 24 horas por dia no canal 893 da Bell 5, agora também na City TV. Todos os domingos, entre as 11h30 e o meio-dia, acompanha CMC TV, com reportagens da comunidade, entrevistas, entretenimento e muito mais. CMC TV agora também na City TV. Mais televisão, melhor televisão.